intend to apply for the summer care program, that's going to be a very quick turnaround as well. And then just a note about the $250 million that's accessible by formula, that I think John was mentioning that is going to be given out to every program by formula based on the number of slots that you have, very much like the quality funding. And what we know is that rather than issue these separately, we're going to try to combine those that make sense. So you might get your quality and your piece of the 250 million related to your preparation to respond to this pandemic and maybe others. You'll notice that some of those pots of money will come out and be funded together, and then others might be separate. We're thinking the summer care money might be a separate allocation to you based, of course, on the availability of those funds against the number of people who actually apply. So with that, I can open things up for questions and talk about some of your flexibilities around the application. For example, we don't anticipate you will have to have a match for these funding opportunities. So if you need further instructions on how to make that clear during your application, please reach out to us, let us know. I think you're just gonna have to put 0 in that non-federal share match, that place on your budget. That 0 will let us know that you're wanting that to be waived. But it will be waived for these applications. We're also asking that you request a waiver if you want to waive that that portion of your grant that's affected your non-federal share of your main grant. We are asking that you request that waivers. For example, if you're in your 3rd quarter and that's when the pandemic hit, you want to waive that portion of your budget's match. You may have met 3/4 of your match, but that 1/4 was when the pandemic hit. You will be asking to waive that portion of your non-federal share match. That's against your current grant. We're also asking that you truncate the need to get board and policy council approval. I think rather than needing to get minutes and all of those documentations, I think we're just asking that you present a statement and include that statement in your application that you've gone over it with your board and policy councils and they approved it. That's all we need. We don't need copies of minutes or the meeting agendas. We just need that statement attached to your application or your request. After having heard that, are there any questions that I could either say more about or answer for you in general around all of the funding opportunities that are out there? I know people have been asking about the kinds of things that they might want to do with the summer care. I'd be happy to talk about what we're thinking in the Office of Head Start, if you guys are interested in that.
I think absolutely. One of the things we keep hearing a lot about is flexibility and creativity when it comes to the summer. And maybe you could share a little bit more of the thinking when it comes to that creativity, some of the freedom, some of the urging programs to be creative. What are you sort of looking for there, and what would be some things that people would need to keep in mind?
So I think we owe the flexibility to Congress. I think Head Start has benefited being a bipartisan program, and I think our representatives and our senators thought it would be a good idea for those children who were impacted by this pandemic to also receive some kind of enrichment experience for the time that they've lost. So I would think about it as an enrichment program that has really a lot of the nice flavor of the quality that you all are already providing without all of the trappings. So, for example, we won't be expecting you to report to us about screenings and assessment. You don't have to worry about reporting these activities to the PIR. So it really will be what I would call an enrichment experience for those children. And as I understand it from our most recent conversations with Dr. B, we are targeting those children that are rising kindergartners. So there's those 4-year-olds that will be going to kindergarten and those children with diagnosed disabilities. But I think if you have other children that you'd like to serve, you could also make a case for those in your application. So you can be creative and flexible. And we also want you to think about how you might stand up a program in face of what's happening on the ground related to the pandemic. And so you want to keep in mind what licensing is saying about programs with young children and maybe practicing safe distancing. I know there's some licensing regulations in our region that have shrank the ratio down to 10 children with 2 adults. I think some programs may be more lenient, but you do want to keep that in mind as well. What is licensing saying about group size and ratios during your summer care activity? And then finally, you do want to make sure that you have the capacity and the infrastructure to do it, keeping in mind something that we're hearing about recently. We have some programs who pay teachers for the 9 or 10 months. They're not a completely full year program, but they may stretch that payment over the 12 months, make some arrangements with staff around that. We're getting questions about how would we then hire those teachers for the summer program. So I think there are things you have to think about, because you would want to pay those teachers. They've already earned their salary. You're just stretching out that payment over 12 months, but you will have to give them an additional payment if they're participating in your summer program, and how you manage that and track that in terms of your accounting system will be important. So we're fielding some of those questions, but we think it's going to just be an enrichment program that you can implement for a certain number of weeks of your choosing. And you can stand those up alongside any other child care programs that you're running or have run in the past. But we would like for you to prioritize who participates in terms of the rising kindergartners and children with disabilities.
Christy has a question. Christy, go ahead.
All right, so Dr. Moore, my question is around child care centers. So, you know, wishful thinking, my fingers are crossed that July is going to come and we're going to be able to have some sort of summer school, summer enrichment program. If our child cares are able to open, we'd like to, our thoughts are, you know, those child care centers need to, you know, also be financially stable. Paducah currently does not have a child care partnership application, but in partnering with them, if we had some children that were on site, would it be realistic for us to be able to partner with some of those centers that we currently work with to improve their quality so that everybody's getting high quality services? So
would you be planning to serve Head Start children in those partnerships? Okay, I think
yes.
That's a laudable approach.
Okay, so yes, that's just I don't want those children and families. We know that we only service, you know, some of our like our Head Start kids, then they go to a different child care center the other portion of the day. And
exactly.
If we run our summer school program, then that's going to take away from their bottom line.
So you want to partner and combine the efforts and not take those services. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great approach. You may want to think about how you might layer that funding for those slots, because you don't want to supplant what's already being paid for by subsidy, for example. You might say, we will provide this funding for salaries and benefits, or we may provide this funding for a degree teacher to come in and partner with you to make sure the curriculum is being implemented. So I think you can think creatively about how you might infuse that childcare partner with some funding over the summer to layer on top of what they've already planned to do because I know that children who are on subsidy go from part-time to full-time when they go into care for the summer.
Right.
So there may be a need to improve the quality beyond what that full-time subsidy might do. And may have slots available for other Head Start children that they don't typically serve. And in that case, you would be providing the full stipend for those kids. So yeah, I think that's a creative way, Christy, to get your children served using the infrastructure that's already there and perhaps some of them are already accustomed to.
Right. Thank you.
I know we've got one hand raised. It's somebody on a call-in line, so it doesn't have your name, but if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question, please do. Or maybe not.
Muted. I always forget to unmute.
Yeah, they are unmuted. They may not know. They may not know that they raised their hand. Okay, other questions for Dr. Moore. This is your chance. He's gracious enough to spend a little bit of time with us this afternoon to talk about it. So I would encourage folks, if you do have a question, to get it out there.
I'd be interested to know how things are going. I know that most of you are working from home, I hope, as well as your staff. And I know that I'm hearing great things about how teachers are maintaining engagement with their families, and family advocates are checking in with folks. One of the things that I shared this morning that Christy may have remembered is that you also need to work hard and play hard, right? You need to make sure that you're taking the appropriate time off to relax. And it's hard to sit in front of a computer all day, every day. But you guys seem to be doing it quite well. I love all these backgrounds.
We've got a question from Vaughn. Oh, Vaughn's having connection issues. Vaughn was curious about the zero income letter. It's a question that he has asked, I think, of us a few times, and we've tried to run an answer down there. But he has been curious about sort of in the current situation, what do we do about that?
You mean zero income in terms of folks applying for a Head Start who may be out of work, or what's? I'm not sure. I don't understand the context.
Let me check here. Correct. Yes, that's. I'm communicating with Vaughn via chat, so yes, that's what he's asking. Yeah,
I think I've always been interested in the efficacy of such a letter or certification, but I think if you feel that it is accurate, I know in this current environment, we know that millions of people are out of work. We have had questions around recruitment activities or efforts that are going on now where you are taking applications and folks are out of work and they may report to you that their current income is zero. I think you could probably anticipate that happening a great deal. I do think that we have to seek more guidance around if they're accepted and enrolled whenever you do accept them and enroll, determining that they're eligible based on that information. I'm wondering what will happen when folks get back to work. I mean, they were eligible at the time that you took the application and they certified that they had no income. You certainly believed that that information was correct. I think in most cases you could ask for other types of documentation that might support that letter, but with all kinds of people out of work, I mean, I think we're talking about people that may not work traditional jobs, who may also be out of work. I think that's the current environment that we in, and you do the best you can to document that that information is accurate. I think a bigger question might be, once our economy is back up and running and you know those folks have gone back to work, what will be the Office of Head Start's position on those folks whose situation has changed since the time of their initial application? We have that question up to central office now. And as soon as we get some guidance from them, I'll be happy to share that. But I think that you should feel comfortable taking that information as documentation of their current income status, knowing that it's more than likely true in our current unprecedented situation.
Yeah, definitely uncharted waters when it comes to
Yes.
that. And everybody is acting on the best
In good
information they
faith.
have and with
Mhm.
the best intent. So,
Yes.
yeah,
I think
it
what we
really,
know is that more people now are eligible for our services than ever before. And even on the childcare side, I think they are making flexibilities through the CARES Act to serve families that they've never served. For example, I think there's some flexibility around serving doctors' children and nurses' children and paying for childcare through CCDF funding during this pandemic. So I think what we know is that more people need us than ever before, and we should not shrink back from serving them as long as you feel comfortable that the information they're providing is accurate.
James Peters has a question. James, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question of Dr. Moore?
I just have a question in regards to, let's just say that the state of Kentucky, since we are following like a different tiers on how we open back up the state, let's just say if it's June or July and we're still not at that certain tier where childcare centers and schools are open, what are we still able to use the summer program money, because it was stressed that it has to be an in-person summer program?
Yeah, I don't know. That's an open question. We don't know what the universe will be like during the summer months. And so we are wanting you to submit your applications, and we're taking a leap of faith that we will be back to somewhat normal activity by the summer months. I think we anticipate getting the money out the door. We don't know for sure with all certainty that our lives will change to a great degree or how soon it'll change. We're hopeful, keeping our fingers crossed. So it may be that you will be able to serve children for 3 weeks, the 6 weeks that we're hoping, for example. And so we are going to try to award this money based on the applications you submit pretty quickly. We're hoping that the money will be able to be utilized, and we're hoping that we don't have to recoup any of that money because we don't think the money can be used for other purposes because of the way it was funded by Congress. So we are aware of how tricky that might be in terms of timing and when states seem to be staggering their approach. I know Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina are beginning to move toward opening small businesses up. I can't speak for the school systems, but I know that some programs have flexibilities that they are not necessarily waiting on the school system to open back up in order for them to be able to provide summer care, unless you are a school district grantee. But we're hoping that if by the summer months your states are moving toward opening the economy back up, that programs that would feel comfortable in implementing such a summer care program. I will say this, that we have begun talking about what our guidance might be, or I should say wisdom might be, on a phased in approach on opening programs back up. Of course, we were not telling programs when to close, and we don't anticipate doing the opposite either. We won't be instructing you on when to open, but encouraging you to use the information on the ground from your local officials and your state officials to determine the best way to open back up. And one of the unique things that we talked about with Amanda Bryans today on a policy call was what that might look like, and how we are concerned about teachers using protective equipment in classrooms, and knowing that our small children won't understand the need to social distance. I mean, anyone who cares for young children know that they don't care about the 6 feet rule, and they want to give their teachers a hug. And so we're just thinking carefully about what we might say about protective equipment and how that might curtail what we know is important for small children. You know, we say a lot more with small children with a smile or a gesture. And if you have a mask on, they miss those cues. So we're concerned about what that might look like for the social and emotional impact on children when we have to live in a bubble, or when we have to work, when our teachers have to work with protective equipment on. So you do need to be giving that some thought, not only about the practice of using such equipment and the need for social distancing and how that might not make sense for a 4-year-old in a classroom environment, but we do need to give it some thought, and we want to hear from you on that. We don't even know how programs might manage to acquire certain kinds of equipment. And one of the people from the childcare community, childcare side of the ACF said, well, they could wear face shields as opposed to masks, but I'm not sure how much damage we'll do to a 4-year-old if the teachers have on face shields and gloves and a gown. It just will be a different environment, and I'm not sure that we do just as much to hinder them emotionally if they have to work with the teacher with the face shield on all day. I mean, what does that communicate? So we do need to think about what our new normal will be like. And it's a journey for us. And so we want to hear what you're thinking about that, and let us know, you know, what would your phased in opening look like? And how would you keep everybody safe? I think that would be the questions we're thinking about in the Office of Child Care. I mean, Office of Head Start.
Sharon Price has a question. Sharon?
Oh, there you are, Sharon. I can't hear you, Sharon, but it doesn't look like you're muted. But are you using your phone or your computer? Because you may have to unmute your phone. Okay. She said she's got her finger up. Looks like she walked away.
Okay, she's at my desk. We're social.
Okay.
Okay, so that was a trot over here. When thinking about being creative and talking about doing a rolling start, if the child development centers in Kentucky are not open, would it be a possibility to explore different options, such as perhaps if families are not working at this time, maybe doing some group socializations and taking different field trips where you're working with the child and with the family, just not in the child development setting at lower ratios?
So, you know, we are open to home-based programs applying for summer care. So I think if you have it sounds like a modified home-based approach.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a creative, just as creative an idea that Christy mentioned earlier. So I think all of that is open for discussion. If it's a thoughtful plan and it lines up well with what your families need and it keeps in mind the current state of things on the ground, and it may be even, Sharon, that you want to say this is plan A if centers are open, but this is plan B if they are not, and build up both of those options in your application. And you'll know at the time that we get to the summer months which one you might want to implement.
Perfect. Thank you.
Certainly you would prefer to implement the traditional child development center model, but the home-based option is viable as well.
I think we're just trying to think out of the box here because we know what this gap I think that all of the Head Start programs across the state and the country as well are doing everything that they possibly can do to keep things moving with the children and with the families and providing those services. But I think we also recognize the gap, so to speak, that is presented when you're not in a classroom setting. And, just really wanting the children that are going to kindergarten and those children that have those IEPs to be as ready as they can be, when school starts again in August.
Right, and remember, the children with diagnosed disabilities don't have to be rising kindergartners.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
So you do have that flexibility as well. But you're right, Sharon. We want to make sure that we give them some dose before they go to kindergarten.
Yes.
And there's a number of ways you can do that. So it sounds like a good idea to me.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
I would support it.
Thank you. Now I've got to sanitize Jessica's desk. Sorry, Jess.
All right. Other questions for Dr. Moore? Other things you'd like to have clarified or
I will say
suggestions
that
on?
I just thought of something that I might want to share. We know that you all are maybe experiencing some level of surplus since you're not up and running as you normally would. I'm not sure how much that might mean for you because you are continuing to pay staff. But if you are experiencing any savings or surplus as a result of the pandemic, you do want to keep an eye on that, particularly if you are in your final project period and won't be able to carry that money over. I think there may be a couple in the region that might apply to. So just keep your eye on that because you do want to make those adjustments for any surplus or money that you do want to carry over, and work with your program specialist and your fiscal specialist on getting those modifications or requests for a carryover and all that worked out.
All right. Jessica Coffey has a question.
Yes. Hi, Dr. Moore.
Hi.
I have a question about monitoring or reviews. Will there be somewhat of a phase-in process when it comes to being federally monitored? Yeah, just because we want to be able to have our teachers get used to being back at work, just trying to get a schedule, a system back in place. And I'm sure many of us are up for reviews coming this fall. So I was just wondering, will there be a phase-in process or an extended, hey, let's be COVID free and get back to normal?
I do think that there will be a phased-in approach, particularly for FA2 reviews, which is intense reviews. We have talked about that. I think Adia is thinking about it. I have approved a couple of postponements for folks that were already in the queue. If you feel that you are facing any situation that might curtail during a monitoring visit, then you need to use your request to postpone that review. We will look favorably on that in the regional office. That's my commitment to you. If you do want to postpone your FA1 or FA2 review, I have approved all of those requests in the last month or so. And so we do understand that programs want to put their best foot forward during the monitoring experience. But yes, we are thinking about a modified approach. That also brings to mind, Jessica, the PIR. We are also talking about a truncated PIR report this year. That's hot off the presses. I don't think I've told that to any group. So you're the first group I'm mentioning that to. The Office of Head Start is thinking about a modified data request or no request at all. So it's either going to be a truncated PIR this year or no PIR. I think the decision is being decided upon right now. They asked for our feedback. I was on the side of why burden the programs with any report during this pandemic? and I was very forceful in my opinion. Other RPMs think that some data is better than no data, and I also respect their opinion as well, but I just want to tell you where I was on the argument. But our Dr. B and her core team in Washington will make the final decision, but we know that it won't be a regular PIR. There will be some truncated version I think programs can manage during this crisis. I just want to bring that up. Jessica, you reminded me of that pending decision.
Carla, did you have anything to mention on that along those lines?
Oh, Carla, you're muted.
Here we go. Can you hear me? Oh, I was just going to say we had our focus area 1 last week, and it went well. So,
oh, good.
Yeah, I was just commenting.
I could have given you a postponement, but I'm glad you guys didn't
go. we were ready, and we just didn't want to put it off. Yeah.
There you go.
It went well. Mm-hmm.
Good. Glad to hear that.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Dr. Moore.
All right.
All right. Other questions? There's a question from Sharon. Has there been any movement on modifications regarding class reviews?
Yeah, I think class reviews, the ones going forward, I think have been postponed almost indefinitely. I don't think we're doing any on-site class reviews, or I think if any of you were participating in the FACES study, I think those have been halted. Those data collections have been halted. So yes, I think class reviews have been greatly impacted by the pandemic. So I don't anticipate any of that on-site, on-the-ground type review to happen until things get back to normal.
Mm-hmm. Other questions from the group?
These are great.
Now's your chance.
If you guys saw the guidance on enrollment that recently came out, I think it went out to everybody. That's good. Have you heard about the new CDC rule about toothbrushing? That's like hot off the presses.
No.
That if you're caring for children now, whether you're in emergency care or caring for first responders, or maybe this will still be in effect when you do the summer care, the CDC is saying that no toothbrushing on site, that toothbrushing should occur at the child's home and not in the child care center. I don't know if that guidance is on their website, but they are working with the offices of child care and the Office of Head Start to make sure that child care programs know that toothbrushing right now is a no-no.
Sharon has a follow-up question. What about on the legislation dealing with class?
The regulation, yeah, I need to check to see where we are. I think you're talking about the changes to the regulations related to DRS around class and sort of lifting the threshold as a trigger for competition. Last I checked, it was imminent. You know, we were looking for that to come out in regulatory guidance any day now, and then the pandemic hits. So I will check on that. I'll be sure to check on that and give you a quick answer on where we are with that regulation. I think there were some changes to class. There may be some changes to the number of audit findings or fiscal findings that might trigger, and just the number of triggers in general. Like it would not be one deficiency that would trigger you. Maybe it would be two. I think those were the kinds of changes we were anticipating. So I'll get back to you all on where we are with that notice of proposed rulemaking, where class and those other triggers were concerned.
Okay, other thoughts, other questions for Dr. Moore while we have him? Here's one from Cindy Graves. Cindy asks, for those programs writing their continuation grant, any suggestions on documenting progress on goals after having been closed?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think you have to, I think it has to be truncated, right? And I think you have to acknowledge that the pandemic happened and that um, you would be picking the ball back up once things get back to normal. I think you just really tell your story on where things are when um, operations stopped as best you can, and can make any reasonable assessment of your traction or progress on those goals. Um, and I think we as a review body would understand your position on articulating how well you're meeting those goals that you had articulated in your previous application. And then I also think you talk about your way forward and really articulate what your plan is, or whether these goals even make sense anymore given our current situation. Which brings me back to that $250 million that's available for, lack of a better word, emergency preparedness. I think those programs who are working on their continuation grant should think about the new normal as best you can. And you might even think about how you might use that money as a way to mitigate some of those circumstances. Because we believe in Region 4, we've talked about it in our staff meetings, that this is not going to change dramatically for many, many months to come, aside from there being a widespread availability of a vaccine or some other therapeutic remedy for COVID-19. You will have to be thinking about your program's goals in light of those situations. So I would imagine some of your goal statements might change to reflect your new normal, and we would anticipate that, or probably would be asking you why your application doesn't address that. You're going to get money. It's a one-time pot of money to deal with some of those new challenges. And whether you're doing capacity building or giving folks new technology to use in case you do have to shut down for 6 weeks, if there's an outbreak in your community, I just think you need to be thinking about that and expressing that and articulating that in your application. I know that was a long answer, but I hope it's resonating with folks.
Just received from Thelma Jackson down at WKU. She says that her program just finished with their CAC FP audit last week. It seemed to go well. For future programs who may receive notifications, can CAC FP be waived?
I'm not sure what she means by waived.
I'm not sure what she means by waived either.
Okay.
Let's see. For future programs who may receive notifications, can CAC FP be waived? Yeah, that's all.
Is she?
That's all
Is she? I wonder if she's talking about the audit. Would you have to participate in the audit? I will say about CACFP, you know, we had a lot of questions about that as it relates to programs wanting to continue meal service during this pandemic and whether or not they would be reimbursed for those costs. We know that meal service is allowable in terms of your Head Start grant, but most folks are participating in CACFP. Some folks are even paying nutrition staff out of their reimbursement. And we were giving programs the guidance to continue to pay those folks using Head Start funds until CACFP caught up. And we think that in most cases they have caught up and have provided guidance that they will make those reimbursements retroactive to when the CARES Act was passed by Congress. So it sounds like if you were doing meal service, that they are going to backdate or make those reimbursements retroactive. If that's something you guys are interested in getting more information about, I can certainly make sure that we double back with you all about the waiver request and reimbursement on the CACFP side. That seems to be of interest to folks who are participating in that program.
Yeah, she just sent me back another note saying, yes, the audit. So yeah, that's what she was.
Yeah, I do believe that we did receive confirmation that any audits that you all have to conduct can be not waived, but I think you can get an extension or a postponement of those audits during this crisis. So you should take advantage or avail yourselves of those extensions and waivers. And that includes all of your audits, even the one that you are required to submit to us. Just request your extension. I would just request it. Listen, I would request a waiver of my non-federal share. I request a waiver of my monitoring reviews, waivers of all audit required. I mean, I would request all my waivers so that I won't have any pressure until this crisis is over.
All right, Tammy has a question. Tammy, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Moore.
Hey, Tammy.
I am from Middle Kentucky Head Start, and we are part of a community action program. And I just wanted to comment a little bit about what we're thinking about as far as the summer program. Okay. Because we know as far as children with IEPs, that transition process is a lot harder for them. And we do schedule several visits when we have a normal school year to the receiving school to make that transition as smooth as possible. So we're looking at partnering with our local boards of education who are tentatively talking about jumpstart programs or other summer programs that they do. We're looking at partnering with them to make sure that the children with the IEP, that those services still continue through the summer that they receive, and also looking at partnering with them as far as the transition process. And at this point, we're already scheduling videos with the kindergarten teachers so that we can share those with the parents on Facebook or in Messenger or whatever groups that they have set up. But we're really looking at making this a joint collaborative effort as much as we can with the LEAs so that we can kind of piggyback on the services they're offering as well as them, piggybacking off ours. With the universal screening being the Brigance for kindergarten in the state of Kentucky, this will give us an opportunity to ensure that our children, which we do all year long, but we want to make sure that these 4-year-olds who are graduating and going on to big school are meeting those markers as far as what's defined on the Brigance.
I think that sounds appropriate to me, as certainly to collaborate with the LEA. And as you say, piggyback on the services that they traditionally provide. I think that any summer care program should be designed to help make the transition for those children with diagnosed disabilities seamless. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a priority. And that goes for your 4-year-olds as well. So I think that would be something that we certainly would support in the regional office as you submit for this this funding.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, does anybody else have their hand up? Other questions for Dr. Moore, clarifications? Dr. Moore, any questions that you might have of us?
No, but I just got an email from Lauren Jackson. So you guys are already on the hunt for your waivers and your postponements. So I like this group. You guys are right on top of it. No, just keep up the great work. We're here to support you. And we certainly want to get out of your way when we need to. And we're following your lead in many cases as governors make decisions about when things will get back to normal. I hope that you're keeping yourself safe and your people safe and taking a break when you need to. I know in the back of your mind, if you work like me, you say, oh, I can take a break later. But later may get further and further away from us. So you do want to find a way to take care of yourself. That's my main concern with leaders like you, that you hear that you do need to take a break. And I want to say it so that I can hear it as well.
Sharon has a question on a really upbeat note.
Hey, Sharon.
Are you aware of any Head Start hero moments that have occurred with programs during this pandemic? Any real success stories?
I've heard a lot of things that I really liked. I just think everybody is a hero in Head Start right now, as I tried to express during my keynote this morning with the National Head Start Association. And we are hearing about some great things that programs are doing, especially on the community action side, where they just continue to provide their services in the face of all these crises. And then I'm also hearing about school district programs that provide thousands of meals each week to children who needed them. That's true in Kentucky. One thing that might be Kentucky focused, since I'm talking to you guys, is that I have been shepherding and sharing with folks about your online education program that was just uniquely designed for this kind of experience, that you could still have children experiencing high quality academics experiences through your online program. I forget the name of it, but I shared that out with other folks in the region through our Head Start Collab offices. I think it was your Head Start Collab that brought it to our attention, and we shared it broadly, but it seems like you guys were a leader in that arena, and folks were able to kind of tap into it as well. I see Christy shaking her head, so she kind of, I guess you guys know what I'm talking about. But to me, those are the hero moments, those innovative ideas that we hear about and share with others. If you have some of those ideas, I think the Region 4 Head Start Association is asking that you share it with them on their Facebook page so that everybody in our region can take advantage of all the creative things that you all are doing in Kentucky. So don't be shy about sharing the great things you're doing. And Ricky, I love that background. I watched Armageddon last night with my wife, and that background reminds me of that movie. Yeah, Christy, I'm not sure if I like your beach background. That, you know, that's like over the top.
All right. Oh, here we go. Renee Sexton has a question. Renee asked, can you provide examples for approved purchases with the $250 million? Also, what are the expectations about full enrollment in August?
So we don't really have any expectations around full enrollment. We know that that's going to be a stretch. We are relaxing some of those requirements in terms of when we're going to pull the trigger on the 4 months. You know, I think that was kind of expressed in the guidance that was recently provided. So we're going to take a deep breath around enrollment. As far as the $250 million pot of money, it is very flexible. So as long as you can tie it back to this pandemic or some area of emergency preparedness, you would do fine. And we've heard of everything from making sure that folks have a laptop in case they have to be away from the center for any amount of time, just building up their capacity to work remotely, to just buying protective equipment for folks, or just shoring up what an emergency preparedness kit might need to include. But it does, as long as you can tie it back to your capacity to deal with a crisis like the one we just experienced, whether it's training, infrastructure, or equipment, it's very flexible. It's one time, so it's not meant to be added to your base, but it does have to relate to your preparedness to deal with this crisis. In the past, for example, you can reimburse yourself. If you purchase laptops for everybody, you can use that money to reimburse yourself for those purchases that you just experienced as a result of this. So don't always think about going forward. You can reach back and reimburse your budget for the money that you spent in preparation for this remote work that just happened in the last 5 weeks. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. All right, gang, we're coming down to the end of our hour with Dr. Moore, and I want to thank him.
Yes,
for
remember to say
taking
thank
the
you
time.
to your congressman and thank you to your senators. They supported the CARES Act. I mean, it's why we have the summer care money and why we have the $50 million to shore up our capacity. So don't, say thank you, because it certainly was a great infusion of funding for our program.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Moore, on behalf of everybody at the Kentucky Head Start Programs Association, Community Action Councils, everybody on the call, thank you so much for spending time with us today, and thank you for everything that you're doing on behalf of children and families. I know that if people have questions after this call, you can send those to me. I'm sure you can send them directly to Dr. Moore. Folks will be more than happy to answer your questions, provide you any additional information. I have recorded this conversation, and I will make that available to everyone so that you'll be able to go back, and if you feel like you missed something, you'll be able to find it. So with that, Dr. Moore, thank you so much again. And
thank you all.
We look forward to visiting with you again soon. Thanks everybody for joining, and we will see you later. Thank you so much.
Bye now.